Are we waiting for somebody?
I got my tax return.
I filed Sunday.
Yeah, I filed next week.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Just move my microphone closer.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'll go ahead and call this joint meeting to order for the Williamsburg James City County School Board. Ms. Olla, will you take the roll?
Ms. Chen.
Here.
Mrs. Donner.
Present.
Mr. Hosang.
Here.
Mrs. Hunley.
Sorry, I'm
Here.
spread.
Mr. Riffle.
Present.
Mrs. Ortego.
Here.
We're next. Call this meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors to order for the joint meeting. Mr. Stevens, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Hippel?
Here.
Ms. Null?
Present.
Ms. Larson?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
All present.
Good. Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Williamsburg City Council to order. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Ms. Kernschier.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Great. So we will move on into our agenda. In response to a number of conversations we've had in a number of different contexts over the last few months, we've heard a desire to see some mid-year academic data, some progress that we have at this point. We don't have everything, obviously, but so we are going to offer a bit of an overview and an update on where we are right now before we go into our discussion on the operating budget. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Peever.
Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Ortego. It is a pleasure to be here. I will tell you that having been in the role of acting superintendent since the beginning part of February, I feel a little bit of pressure this morning. So, as you can imagine, I heard that laugh, Ms. Larson. That felt good. Smile. I am incredibly honored to be here and to represent the leadership team and staff and continuing this conversation around student achievement with respect to the tireless work that's happening in our schools on behalf of the students that we serve. On a daily basis over the last 6 weeks, I've had an opportunity to visit schools and meet with school leadership teams to hear firsthand about the phenomenal teachers and support staff that are working with our students. As part of the ongoing commitment to communicate our academic progress, as Ms. Ortego referenced, we were asked to develop this mid-year with the intent of sharing probably 4 specific things. One of those pieces that we want to provide to both bodies is an overview of the new accreditation system that the state will be moving towards or to in the upcoming school year. We wanted to also share information around Elevate to 28, which is the strategic plan that our school board approved in October. There is a snapshot of that strategic plan by way of this card at your place. Wanted to have that for you, and we are excited that the QR code at the bottom of this card also includes, eventually here in the next day or so, a link to a dashboard that will categorize our key performance indicators. Additionally, we're going to talk a little bit about the Williamsburg James City County Schools school improvement planning process, because we think that's important for both bodies to be aware of. And then finally, we'll finish with some mid-year data results that are normed and that we believe indicate the strong work happening in schools. A very quick synopsis. As of today, the arrows are all pointing in the right direction, and we'll give you some more of that information in just a minute. So let's look very briefly at some demographic data for the school division. As you can see, and by the way, we publish this on our website, and it's usually updated in September and published in October of every school year. We currently serve over 11,000 students across our 16 schools, and that's in pre-K through 12th grade. Almost 4,000 of our students fall into the category of economically disadvantaged. Over 1,000 students are English language learners. 1,700 plus receive gifted education services, and 1,800 plus receive special education services. Moving to the next slide, we wanted to share some highlights from 2024. Both of these bodies are aware that in December, as we prepared and provided academic data, that WJCC is fully accredited, and we were excited about that then and we remain excited. What you see in front of you is the idea that the class of 2024 on-time graduation rate was 95.3%, which is the highest of all time. You'll also see some data related to the SAT mean scores, SOL test performance data, the idea that we were able to reduce our chronic absenteeism rate by a number of percentage points and bested the state by 6 percentage points. And then you'll also see on the slide information related to AP exams and CTE credentials. It's important for us to level set with you the outstanding work that's occurring now and foreshadow the things that are happening in the future. Sean Walker, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Schools, and Kathy Worley, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Schools, will now take you through the rest of the presentation. Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Dr. Gaver. Good morning.
Morning.
The next several slides will share additional information about Virginia's new accountability and support framework model. During the summer of 2022, the Virginia Department of Education set out on a 2-year journey to revamp the current school accreditation system. There was an overarching desire to combine the two systems of accountability, which had numerous requirements, layers, differences, etc., into one new, more transparent system, braiding together all of the state and federal requirements. So knowing that these changes were coming for the 24-25 school year, the Department of School Leadership provided an overview training during the summer leadership series, followed by a more in-depth training at the November leadership and learning session with all division leaders and school leaders. Additional individualized meetings have taken place at schools by the request of the school principal. As I said, beginning back in the summer of 2022, followed by almost a year of 30 public hearings held across the state, gathering more than 1,000 participants, as well as multiple rounds of public review and public comment periods, we now have the new approved Virginia School Performance and Support Framework, which is a model with weighted categories based on a 100-point scale. Similar to the previous accreditation model, this new model also focuses on student proficiency in English reading, mathematics, and science as measured by the SOL test and English learner progress. Similar to the previous accreditation model, this new model also recognizes the importance of student growth, student attendance, graduation, and future-ready skills. Student subgroup performance is also included in the new model, and it's aligned to the federal accountability requirements. However, the N size, the number size of the student reporting groups, has been reduced from 30 students to 15 students. And instead of schools earning that final rating of fully accredited, or accredited with conditions, or accreditation denied, the new model has 4 final performance level descriptors known as distinguished, on track, off track, or needs intensive support. Unlike the previous accreditation model, there are new weighted components for each of the 3 school levels within the new accountability framework. You can see that the mastery component in dark blue is weighted more heavily across all 3 levels, with some variations in the percentages, and it makes up the largest piece of the 100-point model. Mastery at the elementary level is 65%, 60% for the middle schools, and 50% for the high schools. Additionally, elementary and middle schools include growth and readiness components, and while high school has a readiness component too, it also has graduation as its 3rd component in the new framework. The indicators within the mastery component come from the student's performance on the English reading, mathematics, and science SOL tests, and English learner progress at each level. Additionally, the variations in the weighted indicators, ranging from 15% at the high school level to 20% at the middle school level and 22.5% at the elementary level. Next, take a look at the orange-colored component labeled readiness, and you will notice that all 3 levels have a focus on chronic absenteeism. And last, the high schools also have additional indicators for graduation and the Ready for Life 3E indicator focused on enrollment, employment, and enlistment, which is 25% of the 100-point model for high schools. Based on student performance, schools will receive weighted points within all of those 3 E's. There are approximately 1,700 public schools across the state of Virginia, serving about 1.26 million students. To help all school divisions better understand the new accountability model, the Virginia Department of Education plugged in the 2024 spring SOL results in the new accountability framework. 65%, or 1,115 Virginia schools, would earn the top 2 performance categories, on track or distinguished, which is considerably lower than the 88% of all Virginia schools that are currently identified as fully accredited per the previous accreditation model. In WJCC, 13 of our 16 schools, or 81%, would earn the on-track or distinguished performance category designation, which is lower than our current status of 100% of our schools being fully accredited by that previous model. This information is also on the VDOE website, should you be interested in learning more. One indicator in the 3E framework for the high schools underscores the importance of being college ready and every student having access to rigorous coursework. Students earn various points to be used in this indicator's calculation, depending on the number of college-ready experiences they have. These experiences include receiving passing scores on AP exams and participating in dual credit courses and earning a grade of C or higher. A student having 3 or more of these experiences, which may include a score of 3 or higher on 1 or more AP exams and earning a grade of B or higher in a dual credit course, contributes 1 point to the school's Ready for Life indicator. Partial points can also be earned by students meeting slightly lower criteria, such as a lower number of college-ready experiences and/or grades in those recognized courses. It's important to note that students taking AP courses but not sitting for the AP exam are leaving accountability points on the table, which could be counted in the school's overall score in the new framework. This may negatively impact a school's final score and performance category ranking. Therefore, moving forward, all students enrolled in AP courses will be expected to take the applicable AP exam, and while you will see the budget implications in the proposed operating budget for next year. The employment indicator of the 3E framework awards points based on the completion of career and technical education, or CTE, programs and earning state-approved, industry-recognized credentials. For example, 1 point can be earned by a CTE completer earning a credential in a high-demand, high-wage field. Partial points can be earned by a CTE completer earning a credential in any field. The enlistment indicator of the 3E framework awards points based on a student's enlistment potential coming from their score on the military ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. This assessment's designed to measure aptitudes in 4 domains: verbal, math, science and technical, and spatial.
Good morning. So you may ask, are we prepared to embrace and accept the challenges presented in the new framework presented from the VDOE? The answer is yes. In partnership with the school board and the school division's strategic plan, Elevate to 28, it is an updated and realigned roadmap guiding WJCC schools from its current state to its ideal state and creates a system of measurable continuous improvement. This is strongly aligned with the new accountability framework and provides a path for our work moving forward. We have provided everyone with an Elevate 28 information card, which outlines the highlights for our plan and provides a QR code that will take you to details on the division website. This plan is anchored by 5 collective belief statements that embrace a student-centered focus: engagement, communication, and providing a safe, positive, respectful, and collaborative working and learning environment for our students and staff that are critical aspects of Elevate to 28. This plan has one overarching key priority focused on academic achievement, college and career readiness, and educational equity. Our 4 supporting priorities include safety and security, human capital and positive culture, communications engagement, and organizational efficiency and effectiveness. Within each priority area are measurable goals. For example, the division's key priority on academic achievement, college and career readiness, and educational equity is the heartbeat of the school division and frames 13 goal areas underneath, along with the associated key performance indicators. This slide shows 5 academic goals focused on literacy and mathematics achievement as measured by the state required assessments, better known as our Standards of Learning or SOL test. In alignment to the new accountability framework, the Elevate to 28 strategic plan underscores the importance of mastery achievement and recognizing student growth. There are 8 additional goals within the key priority, such as kindergarten readiness and graduation, but for the sake of time, we'll share a sampling of goals within the supporting priorities in the next few slides. Safety and security and human capital and positive culture are the next 2 supporting priorities with Elevate to 28. A focus remains on improving student attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism and providing a safe, positive, and healthy environment conducive to learning. Furthermore, none of this could happen without a focus on recruiting and retaining our staff, providing an environment focused on continued growth and learning in a positive and supportive working environment, and leading the region in compensation. Under the umbrella of communications and engagement, we aim to inform and engage all stakeholders through open and effective communication and to increase volunteer and staff participation and opportunities to meaningfully connect with other division and community stakeholders. Last, the division places an emphasis on operating responsibly with the resources that are available to it. The final supporting priority focuses on the efficiency and effectiveness of operations across the division and includes goals within finance, operations, and technology. Our Elevate to 28 strategic plan provides a clear roadmap focused on our key priority. All 16 schools develop an annual school improvement plan directly aligned with Elevate 28. Each school plan is unique to their students' data with related goals on reaching and or exceeding the benchmarks for literacy, mathematics, science, student attendance, graduation, and life readiness, which ensures we continue doing the work that the new Virginia Accountability Framework measures. And at the school level, our school leaders, teachers, specialists, interventionists, and support staff are championing the success of every student, analyzing multiple data points, monitoring student progress, and responding to the data to inform instructional planning and teaching. As we shared with you in our data review during our previous joint meeting, we are focused on the work with specific initiatives and strategies to support student achievement. This school year, we continue a student-centered focus paired with a growth mindset. School leaders, teachers, and staff set high expectations for academics, behavior, and school attendance. Teachers and staff focus on the delivery of high-quality first-time instruction that engages students in learning. And teachers are using data from common assessments to gauge student learning and inform instructional planning in collaboration with their colleagues. Individual school data points inform the goals developed in the school improvement plans and frame the work and interventions across academic content areas. Finally, our school improvement plans include strategies that focus on writing across all content areas and student goal setting.
The next few slides will provide a high-level mid-year academic update for the elementary schools. Annually, the school division administers a required statewide literacy screener to all students in grades K through 2 in the fall and late spring. This screener was previously known as the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screener, better known as PALS. The statewide literacy screener identifies students needing intervention who are not meeting the literacy proficiency benchmark. Through a collaborative multi-year partnership between the Virginia Department of Education, the Virginia Literacy Partnership, and UVA, The redesigned and more robust statewide literacy screener has been renamed the Virginia Language and Literacy Screener, or VALS. This slide shows 4 years of historical data indicating the percentage of identified students needing literacy intervention in grades K through 2. The new literacy screener was administered this fall of 2024 to all students in grades K through 2. And as you can see on the slide, 28%, or 651 students, were identified as high risk, needing intervention support across our 9 elementary schools. Individualized reading plans were also developed for all of these students. For the first time, the state required all school divisions to administer a mid-year assessment to gauge student progress. And we're excited to share that the mid-year assessment reveals a reduction of 159 students no longer needing additional literacy support, which is an overall reduction from 28% down to 21.7%. You can see that our teachers, interventionists, support staff, and tutors are making positive gains with our identified students in grades K through 2. Annually, per the Code of Virginia, the state requires an approved student growth assessment to be administered to all students in grades 3 through 8 for reading and mathematics. This year, the state allowed school divisions to use the IXL diagnostic assessment for math and/or reading. Reading from left to right, the fall math data is in blue for grades 1 through 5, and the mid-year data is in orange. As you can see, all grade levels made growth from the fall to the mid-year. All students in first grade through 5th grade took this computer adaptive diagnostic snapshot in the fall and mid-year on their school-issued device. And based on that diagnostic score, the program builds a personalized learning path for each student. Students can work independently on IXL during small group math instruction. The program provides immediate feedback to the student, and it also has tutorial videos to help the student. Teachers can easily monitor their students' progress on an electronic dashboard and then work with the students on goal setting and celebrating student growth and achievement. For semester 1, 1,076 students, or 22% of the elementary enrollment, received additional literacy intervention beyond their classroom teacher. 767 elementary students, or 16%, received additional math intervention. The chart on the bottom shows the number of students who exited from the intervention for the start of the second semester. Additional tutor support happens during the school day for our identified elementary students. And again, we celebrate the focused work of our staff across our 9 elementary schools and including support from central office.
The next few slides will provide a high-level mid-year academic overview for middle and high school. As seen earlier with our elementary data, a state-approved diagnostic growth assessment is administered to all students in grades 3 through 8 for reading and mathematics. Mr. Walker previously described how the program works in the classroom and is individualized for each student. This year, we utilized IXL in middle school for math and reading. Our students took assessments this fall with a mid-year check this winter. Reading from left to right, the fall data is in blue for grades 6, 7, and 8, and the mid-year data is in orange. All grade levels made progress and showed growth from fall to winter. The next slide takes a look at the same diagnostic assessment for math. Reading from left to right, the fall data is in blue for grades 6, 7, and 8, and the mid-year data is in orange. All grade levels made progress or showed growth from fall to winter. These data points for English and math are utilized to assess gaps across content and serve as only one piece of information supporting teacher decisions as they plan new instruction, incorporate new strategies, and plan extra support and interventions. It's important to note teachers use multiple data points and information daily to monitor student progress, including our common division benchmark assessments, exit slips, formative assessments, daily activities, assignments, and more. We are pleased with the forward momentum in English and math. The success of our students is supported by the incredible work of our staff across schools and central office. The next chart shows a snapshot of intervention provided for our middle school students during the day and after school. The top chart represents the number of middle school students served with strategic, data-driven intervention and support from a teacher or specialist during the school day. Our 7th and 8th grade students are assigned to an intervention block with a teacher, and our 6th grade students are served in class and in small group pull-out sessions with teachers. This equates to 623, or 23%, of our middle school students receiving direct literacy intervention, and 369, or 20.5%, of our middle school students receiving math intervention during the school day. Additionally, after school, we have 184 students currently enrolled in after-school tutoring. This number evolves as student needs are identified and as we get closer to the spring testing season. Now we'll take a glimpse of our graduation data. The WJCC 2025 graduation cohort has 975 students, meaning the students in this cohort started 9th grade during the 21-22 school year and are expected to graduate within 4 years in the spring of 2025. This slide includes our data and a definition of the terms used in the data categories on the chart. Currently, 96 of the 975 are on track to graduate on time with a standard or advanced diploma. 30 will complete school with a GED, with an additional 2 students currently working towards the completion of their GED. 17 students will earn an applied studies diploma, and about 20 students are currently on our dropout list. School teams continuously attempt to track down students, including our dropouts. They are also continue to support current students with remediation and intervention and provide opportunities for students to recover credits for coursework. Additionally, we assist students as they prepare for SOL retest or alternative tests to earn verified credits to meet graduation requirements. Our top priority is always supporting and encouraging students to make it a goal to earn an advanced or standard diploma. However, we ultimately are committed to ensuring that all students identify a pathway to post-secondary success with the skills to be life-ready, whether that be the traditional track or via a different path such as the GED that provides students the same opportunities as a traditional graduate.
And as we transition to the next slide, I did want to mention to the group that we look forward to graduation ceremonies happening on Saturday, June 7th at Kaplan Arena. So hopefully you are able to join us for all, or 1 or 2 or 3, actually all of the ceremonies. Dr. Worley?
Our mid-year meetings with principals and school-based leadership teams are always informative and showcase the details of the extensive work in place to support our students and staff. One theme across mid-year conversations with schools is our school leaders and staff care about our students first and foremost. Schools are incredibly focused on building community and instilling a sense of belonging for all stakeholders. When students feel safe and cared for, they thrive academically and socially in school. Additional themes include our consistent communication of high expectations for student achievement and behavior, our focus on the importance of high-quality first-time instruction for all students, and our teams use data to drive instructional decisions and to provide extra support for students. Additional strategies and supports in place across all schools include small group instruction, access to tutoring, direct support from teachers, technology-based resources, intervention classes, and more. And finally, teacher collaboration enhances our instructional practice in our classrooms. Our school teams thrive on learning from one another and make this a priority.
As noted earlier in the presentation, chronic absenteeism is part of the former accreditation model and is also included in the new accountability framework model. As a reminder, being chronically absent means a student misses 10% or more of the days enrolled in school. This includes excused and unexcused absences. So, if a student is enrolled for 180 days and misses 18 school days, then that student is chronically absent. Our K-12 semester 1 attendance data shows that 12.2%, or 1,389 students, are chronically absent, meaning they've missed 10% of the current days enrolled in school for semester 1. This is a considerable improvement when you compare it to the 23-24 semester 1 rate of 15.3% being chronically absent. Schools are consistently sending parent notifications, conducting attendance meetings, developing attendance plans, making home visits, and working collaboratively with city and county partners to hold students and families accountable while also ensuring intervention and support. These continued improvements reflect our commitment to fostering a culture of daily attendance and student engagement in school. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kiever, members of the Board of Supervisors, City Council, Mayor Pons, that concludes our mid-year overview, and we can pause for any brief questions or comments before we turn it over to Mrs. Ewing to hear more about the proposed budget.
I have a question.
Thank you. Yes.
So, you said about the AP exams, they would be expected, not required?
I think we could use the term required. We could use the term mandate. Our goal is if we're able to fund the request, that we would, every student that's enrolled in an AP course would take the subsequent AP exam.
And then the other question I had was on the military. How do those scores get back to the division in order to get points for that?
I would say not as seamlessly as we would like. I think we continue to work with our recruiting partners on how to make that happen. I'm not sure whether Mr. Walker or Dr. Worley could speak to that a little bit more specifically. It has not been a seamless process to this point, but as the state is now including that in the accreditation framework, we are hopeful for some additional support at the state level to help make that happen.
Okay, and then just one last question. We will be undergoing some sort of change of administrations next January at the state level. Is there any type of insurance from VDOE that this will be the program for 5 years, 10 years, or could a new administration change this program?
I don't believe that there is anything that says that this could not change in 5 years, but it's a legislative process.
Okay.
So we would like to avoid the whiplash phenomena as we plan forward for the new framework, and it would be our hope that this remain the framework so that we can all understand what it looks like and feels like. I'm not sure it does any of the school divisions a benefit to have that flip over in 18 months or 2 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had one question about the differences between accreditation and the new 4 levels. If you have in a school that is considered off track, is that considered accredited or not accredited? In other words, what's lost in translation, and what does it really mean?
That's a great question. Mr. Walker, can you provide a little bit more context around that, please?
Sure. The former terms will no longer be used.
Okay.
And those new terms will be. So for instance, if a school would be deemed off track, they would be eligible for certain supports from the state, such as a school applying for a school improvement grant, receiving financial funds to have a specific focus on improving maybe potentially a particular student reporting group that they're trying to improve.
Okay.
But it's those 4 new names.
So technically, we won't use terms like accredited with warning or fully accredited.
Okay.
We will report out that X number of schools are on track, X
Correct.
number of schools are distinguished, X number of schools are off track.
Okay, thank you.
But off track, is it fair to say that off track is the closest equivalent would be accredited with conditions?
If we had to try to pair
Yeah,
that,
okay.
yes.
Just to translate it to what we've been used to.
Because people will try to make that connection,
Sure.
and I'm just sort of trying to figure out,
I think to your point, one of the things that we'll need to do as we get into the fall of the school year, when the SOL test results are available to school divisions through the course of the summer and into August and September, as we talk with our community about what those results mean, we'll need to provide context around the shifts in the framework.
Okay.
Because what we have called it previously will not be what we call it moving forward.
okay, thank you.
Mr. McGlynn?
Can I first of all just thank Mr. Walker and Dr. Worley for the very informative presentation. It really helps us a lot to understand what's happening, and the change that once again is being brought forward to that school systems have to accommodate themselves to try to meet those changing standards, shifting sands that occur quite frequently. I want to congratulate the schools and the teachers and the students for the improvement that you're showing at the mid-year point. It's just one data point, obviously, but it's encouraging to see the impact of the interventions that are taking place and the ability of students to show progress. I was particularly pleased to see that a significant number of students were moving out of the need for accommodation, in a sense, over the course of the first half of the semester. So congratulations on that, and hopefully we'll see it going forward. I'm hopeful that, I guess I'd just like some reassurance that we've had a pretty rough start to this calendar year with
I'm not
snow.
sure what you're talking about, Mr. McGlynn. Has it snowed? Have we had snow days?
We've had a few snow days, a few other challenges that lay on top of those snow days, including, I understand, adaptation to new curriculum is
Sure.
requiring significant teacher time for training and so forth. Do we feel? Do you feel confident about how well we'll be able to maintain this kind of progress that you're showing in this year report?
I think we are pleased with the results so far, but we're not satisfied. And one of the things that we continue to hear as we meet with school leadership teams is a laser-like focus on meeting the individual needs for each student. I think we've done 14 of the 16 mid-year review meetings, and in each of those meetings, I have been blown away at the level of specificity about individual and specific student needs. And it is clear to me that our teams are working to maintain or expand that level of support so that when we provide results to our board and this body in the fall, we're all going to be very pleased with that.
Great. Well, again, I want to congratulate you on what the progress that's been made so far. Obviously, we'd love to be able to see performance at the school level and see among the particular groups that have been identified as in need of special attention that we're achieving that across the board. So thanks very much for what you've provided already, and really do appreciate the transparency.
Yes, sir. I think our intent would be to come back to both bodies as we get into the fall with specific data, not dissimilar to what we did in December, and be able to provide it by subgroup and show some of the strengths and perhaps challenges that each school is facing.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So very helpful and informative. And I had a question similar to Mr. Eisenhower, so that has been addressed. But then my other question is about the mid-year literacy screening. So what was PALS is now VALS. Is that where? Okay, yes. I'm getting with it. And I was just curious to know the 28% to the 21%. Is the rescreening, the mid-year screening, does that rescreen everyone or only those that were previously identified?
All students.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I had two questions. One is, how does this change from accreditation to distinguished, et cetera? Is that just for Virginia, or is that a change in other states? And so for kids applying to college where one comes from an accredited and one comes from a distinguished school system, is there any thought as to how that might work?
Each state has its own accountability and accreditation framework. Generally, with respect to applying for colleges and university, it's about your academic transcript, and it's individualized to the student. So I'm not sure that the designation of a school as being distinguished or on track would have necessarily a net positive or net negative impact on a student applying. I do think that there will be some public perception pieces that we need to continue to talk about. even if a school falls into the off-track category, it doesn't mean that there aren't terrific things going on in that school. And we'll need to support one another if we find ourselves in that position.
Do we know if any other states have adopted something similar to this?
I do not off the top of my head.
We're unique,
Mr. Riffle indicates that we're unique.
as we are in a number of ways. And my second question was, you talked about specificity of data. So is the goal to break this down to individual schools so that we can see how one elementary school is doing in terms of its literacy level from previous year?
I'm not sure that we would provide that necessarily at the mid-year point, but I think that as we get through the full testing regimen and get through SOL tests and receive results back, that we would come back in the fall. I think last year we did it in December, but at some point be able to provide a more targeted overview with respect to the 16 schools and the performance levels.
So just one follow-up. You have 3 schools that are not, you said 13 out of 16, right?
Projected, so I think the thing that we want to take into consideration is that this is modeled on the new framework. So it's last year's results with the new framework.
So are you targeting right now those 3 schools that to put extra resources into to get them? And then just to follow, I mean, to be fair about what different states do, WJCC does an honors diploma still, I'm assuming, and Commonwealth of Virginia, there's other school systems that don't do that. So it's just not an apples to apples all around.
Right. So to your question about the 3 schools that were identified in the model, I think the important thing to remember is that was results from last year's testing round. So this year there are different students that are potentially being assessed.
Right.
We do provide intensive support in those buildings where it is most needed, and we'll continue to do that. At the elementary level specifically, each school develops what we call a Finish Strong plan, and that plan is designed to really ensure that every student has an opportunity to experience success through the SOL testing process. So it is our intent to ensure that we don't have anybody that's off track. I mean, ultimately, we want to be distinguished or on track. The reality is, looking at the data with last year's data and the new framework, that there's a 23% drop statewide. So if that's the case statewide, I think we could anticipate a slight change in our community. But I will tell you that our administrators and teachers and support staff are working tirelessly to help ensure that doesn't happen.
If I could just say, I mean, it is kind of baffling, and I think it is important to communicate to the community this change as clearly as we possibly can. I'm baffled by the idea that we're moving to a system that suggests our school systems across the Commonwealth are not as good as they were when we had a recognition that Virginia schools were doing a good job relative to many other states. Now we're going to have a system that puts in place a suggestion that we are not doing nearly as well. So, kind of hard to understand.
No, and I would have had the same question in my mind, and I wondered why the state decided to shift this, but that's a question maybe somebody else should answer.
I'll look to I don't have any answer to that, Mayor Pons.
But I would also echo Dr. McGlennon's congratulatory note that it is good to see that performances are better. There's less students requiring those that special attention. As we do move, and I recognize that this was a snapshot mid-year, but as we get to the end of the year and you all provide that information, I'm looking forward to seeing, more detailed information on the different subgroups. So appreciate all the hard work that administration and the teachers are putting forward, on behalf of our children, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no more questions on that one? All right, we will move on to our next agenda item and discuss our FY26 budget. Again, over to Dr. Keever.
Thank you, Ms. Ortego. As we shift our presenters, I wanted to reference the fact that you've just heard some of the many highlights that the school division celebrates and the manifestation of how we pursue excellence and champion success of every student. It is my belief, it's our belief as a team, that our teachers move mountains every day to enable every student to reach their greatest potential. In a recent survey related to the strategic plan, more than 92% of WJCC families and staff report that our school division is a great place to work and learn. We have much to celebrate, and great things are certainly happening. Our student population, however, has changed and is continuing to change. While student enrollment has remained steady at 11,300, the needs of our students have grown and shifted. For example, nearly 35% of our students qualify as economically disadvantaged, and more than 3% of our students and their families qualify for support within the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. From the 21-22 school year to this year, our special education population has grown by over 9%, and our English language learner population has grown by more than 40%. Our students represent 84 different countries and speak 49 different languages. Over that same time period, our instructional staff has grown by less than 2%. I also want to mention that as we talk with teachers, as we talk with administrators, the idea that 45% of the behavioral referrals at the elementary level are for students in kindergarten and first grade is disconcerting. And this has led to repeated requests for additional support in our elementary schools. In our annual conversations around budget, there is this push and pull between the idea of wants and needs, luxuries and necessities. And frequently, we have associated our needs with investment that it would take in order to maintain the excellent services that we provide. The question becomes, as you will see over the next several slides, what will the level of community investment be with respect to this operating budget? You will see a total request from our funding partners that's nearly $13.9 million above last year's request. And that's sizable. But genuinely, we would not present that to this body if we didn't believe in the fundamental importance of the things that we were requesting. And transparently speaking, the true budget of need would have been nearly $21 million above last year's request. The administrative team, the board, takes seriously its commitment to responsibly steward community resources. 87% of our operating budget is people. And the idea around the presentation you'll see today is really focused on two parts of the people. Direct student-centered supports for additional staff and retaining and recruiting the very best staff to ensure high-quality learning experiences for every student. I'm going to ask Ms. Ewing to start our presentation off. I'll be assisting her, as will Mr. Walker and Dr. Brown. Renee?
Thank you, Dr. Keever. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Today we'll be sharing the superintendent's proposed budget for fiscal year 26. This budget is based on Governor Youngkin's amendments to the 2024-2026 state budget. We do anticipate increased funding based on the General Assembly's budget, but that still is not finalized at this point. This is an overview of the items we will be reviewing this morning, which will include background information related to the requirements for developing the budget, historical enrollment information, as well as the projection for next year, provide an overview of state revenue based on the governor's budget, and a review of mandatory and essential operating expenditure increases. State Code Section 22.1-92, estimate of monies needed for public schools, requires the superintendent to prepare a needs-based budget to present to the school board for consideration.
This is a data-driven estimate of what is required to provide the highest quality education possible to the children of our community. Considerable work has gone into developing the superintendent's proposed budget. This fiscal year 26 plan is a balance of meeting established school board priorities related to the strategic plan, Elevate to 28, and meeting the diverse needs of the division for the upcoming fiscal year. We are thankful for both the leadership and financial support you have provided to our community and schools, and we look forward to our continued partnership throughout the budget development process. The Local Composite Index, or LCI, is the state's measurement of each locality's ability to pay for public education. The formula takes into consideration the changes in property values and taxes, the local income and retail sales, and compares it to that for the entire state. Each locality's index is adjusted to maintain an overall statewide local share of 45% and an overall state share of 55%. Much of our funding is derived from a per pupil cost multiplied by 1 minus the composite index. So the lower the composite index results in more state funding, while a higher composite index would result in less state funding. The LCI is supposed to be an indicator of the wealth of the locality. If it goes up, the locality is deemed to have increased wealth and will be able to provide additional funding to support its programs. The maximum LCI is 0.8. The LCI is updated at the start of each biennium, and since our school division serves 2 localities, we have 2 LCIs. The City of Williamsburg's is 0.7426, and James City County's is 0.5403 for the 24-26 biennium. This chart shows a comparison of our LCI with divisions here on the peninsula, as well as 3 of the larger Region 2 divisions on the south side. As you can see, Williamsburg and James City County have the highest LCI of any locality in our area. Unfortunately, that means fewer state dollars for our schools and an increased dependence on our local funding partners. Enrollment is based on our September 30th student count each year. This is a historical look at our enrollment from fiscal year 2017 until now. We saw a decline in enrollment in fiscal year 21 to 10,858 due to the pandemic and have almost reached the pre-pandemic enrollment level with current enrollment at 11,379. Each year, Future Think prepares 10-year enrollment projections based on our September 30th enrollment. These projections include a low, moderate, most likely, and high projection. Next year's projection ranges from a low of 11,345 to a high of 11,833. For many years, we used the low projection to develop our operating budget, but since COVID, we have been developing our budget based on the current year enrollment and have done so again for this budget cycle. Enrollment has begun to stabilize after the decline due to the pandemic, and we believe the most conservative approach is to budget based on the students that we currently have. And as a reminder, these enrollment numbers do not include preschool students, which total 395 each year. Currently, our state revenue is based on the governor's amendments to the 24-26 biennial budget and is an increase of approximately $2.4 million. The General Assembly has approved a budget which includes funding to fully eliminate the cap on funded support positions. Additionally, funds are included to establish an add-on payment to basic aid for special education students. The estimated funding impact of these items is an increase of approximately $1.9 million.
As I referenced in the opening comments, there were a number of items that administration talked about over the course of the last several months that did not make its way into the proposal that we shared with the school board on February 18th. That includes nearly 21 FTEs, request for additional and increased stipends, contractual changes, meaning the number of days that certain employee groups would work, and then, while we'll talk about it in a few minutes, the compensation study that the school division underwent over the course of the fall and into January, we initially are recommending a 3-year implementation, with this year coming up in fiscal 26, year 1. We did not bring forward the idea of bringing the whole compensation study amount into this budget. So somewhere in the neighborhood of about 9.6 million did not make it into our initial request.
In addition to enrollment data, we use the strategic plan to guide the development of the budget and to ensure the budget supports the needs and goals of the school division. As we start a review of the expenditure increases included in the budget proposal, the first category is those items considered mandatory increases. These include mandatory positions required by state mandated staffing requirements, as well as cost increases for contractual obligations the school division has. As part of balancing the fiscal year 25 budget, we planned for continued funding of several positions with ESSER funds, as well as the trailer leases for July through September. We needed to add these amounts to our fiscal year 26 budget to account for a full year of funding. Other items included here are mandatory staffing requirements for language instructional educational program or LEAP teachers and special education teachers and aides, funds to sustain the bus driver pay increase approved in January, anticipated increases in New Horizons and special education private day tuition, as well as utilities, and increases for contractual commitments that we have related to risk management, safety and security, grounds, human resources and technology contracts, as well as Canvas and Lexia instructional programs. In total, these items amount to approximately $3.3 million and include 14.5 FTEs. Mr. Walker will now share more details related to the LEAP positions.
This bar graph illustrates a clear increase in our English learner student enrollment over the last 4 years, with each bar representing the number of students enrolled in our Language Instruction Educational Program, or LEAP. The 6.5% listed on the left for 2018-2019, and then on the right, the 9% for 24-25 represent the English learner percentages of our total WJCC student enrollment. This consistent growth in English learner enrollment over the last 4 years suggests a rising demand for English language support for our EL students, ongoing investment in resources, staff training, and tailored support services to meet the diverse needs of this expanding student population. This chart displays the distribution of English learners across the language proficiency levels: Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, and monitor students, separated by elementary school, middle school, and high school. Notably, Level 1 and Level 2 students combined represent about 47% of our total English learner student enrollment. Level 1 students are mostly newcomers with very little English, and Level 2 students are beginning to develop their English language acquisition. Both of these levels require the most support and resources in our schools. Overall, this chart underscores the importance of tailored instructional strategies to support English learners at various proficiency levels, ensuring that all students receive the resources they need to succeed as they progress through their K-12 public education. The Language Instruction Educational Program, or LEAP program, was staffed based on the Virginia Department of Education's guidance of 1 to 50, which means for every 50 English learner students, there should be 1 LEAP teacher. Well, in May of 2024, the Virginia General Assembly approved the new staffing model, which is now based on need. The fiscal year 25 operating budget had 22 total LEAP teacher allocations. With this new mandated staffing model that goes into effect for school year 25-26, and for us to remain in compliance with the standards of quality, we will need a total of 31.09 LEAP teachers. We're recommending rounding that to 32 LEAP teachers due to the increasing EL student enrollment over the last 4 years. This is an increase of 10 teacher allocations from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26. The new staffing model states the following ratios. Level 1 students require a 1 to 20 caseload. And with 306 current EL students at level 1, this equates to 15.3 teacher allocations. Level 2 students require a 1 to 30 caseload. And with 181 students currently at level 2, this requires 6 teacher allocations. Level 3, we move down to a 1 to 40 caseload. With 260 students currently, this requires 6.5 teacher allocations. Level 4 is a 1 to 50 teacher ratio. With 47 students currently, this requires 1 allocation. Monitor status students are there for 4 years to be monitored. That's a 1 to 100 caseload ratio. Currently, we have 235 students requiring this, and that would be approximately 2.35 teacher allocations. And next, Dr. Brown will discuss special education staffing.
Mr. Walker, could I just ask a question about that before we move on?
Yes, sir.
Are those new mandated positions being supported by state funding as well?
Yes, there is support for that.
Can I ask a question as well?
Yes, sir.
Is that, I see with the level 1, 306 students and 15.3 staff needed, is that instruction for 1 hour or is that instruction for a whole day? Or the, because just looking at the numbers, it looks like, is that an 8, or not an 8-hour day, but a full class day? Or is it just an hour and we need X amount per hour? You see what I'm saying?
I do, yes. Our level 1 and level 2 students require the most time and the most support throughout the school day. Depends on the developed LEAP plan for each student, but that LEAP teacher is going to be spending a lot more time with level 1 and level 2 students, and then they peel that back a little bit as the students advance up through the levels.
The ratio is not related to necessarily time with student. The ratio is X number of students require a staff member to be assigned to them.
Okay.
A little bit more like the special education staffing model.
And is that, I know that right there it says 1 to 20, so 20 students in a class. But that class is 45 minutes, hour and a half, I don't know what it is.
Right, and I think, so maybe, I don't think the 1 to 20 really means that 20 level 1 students would be in a class with a teacher. What it means is that if I am a LEAP teacher at Matthew Whaley, I would be assigned 20 students on my caseload, and I would be working with those 20 students throughout the day in various capacities. I might push into their classroom when they're doing literacy instruction. I may pull them out of the classroom during mathematics instruction to work directly with them. But the time that I spend with each of those students is dependent upon what is in their specific English learner plan.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. They'll be floating back and forth then. It won't be a class, a dedicated class of 20 students.
That's right.
They'll move out through the schools and
That's right.
and pull them as they have the time and effort. But
Yes, sir.
they can't do any more than 20 in one class.
They can't be assigned more than 20 students to their caseload. So
Okay.
it's not, and I may not be explaining it right, but it's not about a classroom designation. It is about a group of students that you will work with throughout and during the day.
And our schools do a great job with that, and I've seen it work and how it works and how well it works with, so I'm not questioning that ability. But is there a way to do it in a class at a time? And that would save on employees in the long run and dedicate X amount that would be, another instruction class that would be, because it looks like we're getting more and more. It looks like the level's going up each year as far as, so would it be something that maybe we look at and go, and I don't know, the teachers do this, so I'm kind of just
Right.
questioning it as
I think
as a
the idea,
citizen.
I think the idea behind hiring specific LEAP teachers is to work with students across classes, because students will have math, English, science, social studies, etc. And the LEAP teacher would work with individual students on needs within those various subject areas and support teachers in terms of instructional strategies to meet the needs of those unique learners. So the model that we utilize most generally is not a one class with 20 LEAP students working with a teacher model.
And I don't think it's a English as a second language class, if that's how you're picturing it, where 20 students sit in a class and are taught English. That's not the model either. It's, like Dr. Keever said, it's really just, they are being taught English, but through the instruction time in the subjects where they need the most help.
See, and
That varies from student to student.
yeah, and that kind of goes back to, you know, when we were in school and you were required to have French or German or whatever, and you went to a class for it. Now we're seeing the same thing with English. So I would think we would have a class for English. And, you know, because I imagine as you're going in and out and back and forth, the teachers are doing a great job. Don't think that at all. Because I've watched them in the process of helping other students and all that. And, but as this level's building up, you know, I'm thinking these students, if they don't have English as a foundation, then they've got to be struggling throughout the entire day. So if we kind of put them in one class and said, hey, we're going to help you try to quicken it along and give them that extra time to have an English class, you know, and I think we need that.
Would you back up one slide? So as an example, high school, there might be 70 level 1 students. Those level 1 students might be across the 3 different high schools. Similarly, at the elementary level, you might have 10 or 15 level 1s at one elementary school, but 25 or 30 at another. So the ratio is really about assigning a staff member to work with those students and not necessarily about English language instruction specifically to a class, because the model works differently across those 3 levels.
Okay, and I can understand that. You know, even if we put, what do you got, 16 schools, we put one at each school, you know, and that saves us a few dollars there along the way. Just a thought for future, nothing will solve today, just future things to think about. Thank you.
And I guess one thing that Michael's saying is, like, when I took French, I was in French, but then when I went to science, it was taught in English, so I knew English.
Right.
What we're saying is that someone who comes to the school and doesn't know any English, they're going to be in a class to learn English, but then when they go to their science class, they're going to not have any help and not understand. So I can see the point of, it's more like a social worker having a caseload where it's working individually in all categories as opposed to just English.
Right,
Because
but
all
they
of
won't,
the rest of classes are taught in English.
yep, but they won't follow that student in each class. They'll spend X amount of time with this student and then go to the next student and go, but if we condense that and go, you know, we're seeing that we need to do an English class.
And I would assume they do.
The scheduling models, dependent upon the level, we do try to cluster LEAP students together so that there is a more seamless work opportunity within particular classes. Also, all of our LEAP students don't necessarily speak the same language themselves.
Right.
And that also provides some complexity for the LEAP teachers working with those individual students.
Yeah, and, you know, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm questioning anything, just thoughts and
Yes, sir.
and things that might help, may not, as y'all put your stuff together for the next school year and that sort of thing, because I've had 7 children through the school system, and I love the school system. Y'all do a great job, so.
Thank you.
I've got plenty of knowledge for 30-some years here, so our school system's top-notch. Thank you.
And he means it because he's not running anymore.
I think he meant it before that, though, too, right? Like, even when he wasn't running, he still meant it, right?
Yes, he meant it.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
On that note, good morning. In order to provide context to the special education mandated needs, we will begin by looking at special education population trends. The numbers presented here represent students receiving special education services as documented on the December 1 state reporting document. This is used to determine state and federal funding for special education for the next fiscal year. The December 1 count for this year shows an overall increase of 6 students. This projects a potential stabilization to our overall special education population. This slide highlights the increasing special education population at Bright Beginnings, along with students in grades kindergarten through 12. It is important to note that the overall percentage of the enrolled kindergarten through 12 students receiving services with an IEP is 16.4%. Historically, the percentage of enrollment for special education in Bright Beginnings trends upwards over 60% as we progress throughout the school year. Looking at this year's data, the number of caseloads above the maximum caseload is at 1. These caseloads adjust monthly based on revised IEPs requiring increased services, as well as transfer and newly eligible students. It is important to note that these caseloads numbers reflect caseloads against the total allocations for each school. The Department of Special Education will continue to monitor enrollment and caseloads throughout the remainder of this year. It must be noted that the dedication of our special education teachers and support staff has allowed WJCC to continue providing a quality education for our students. This chart presents a comprehensive view of our special education expenditures from 2020 through 2024. It highlights the financial commitment from federal, state, and local sources to support students with disabilities. The increasing trend in total expenditures reflects our ongoing investment in maintaining and serving the increasing needs of our students as they evolve. Over the 5-year period, total spending has consistently increased in correlation with the increase of salary and benefits, increased complex needs of our most vulnerable students with disabilities. Some examples include contracted services for speech, OT, and psychologists, self-contained paraprofessionals, one-to-one paraprofessionals, instructional paraprofessionals, reading and math adapted instructional programming, assistive technology, early intervention, our child find practices, private and public alternative placements, home-based needs due to private and public day placements, and a breakdown shows that local funding is approximately 70%. State funding is 21%, and federal funding is approximately 9%. For fiscal year 24, the amount of state and federal funding was $8 million, and local funding was $18.7 million. Special education staffing needs continue to grow. These needs can be determined by students transferring into the division with specific needs already outlined in their IEPs that require personnel considerations. Also, needs can be determined by IEP teams for students currently being served in the division. This year, an additional .5 teacher position was added to James River based on needs determined by caseload allocation. 4 special education teacher assistant positions have been added this year to meet the needs as determined by IEP teams. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Ewing to discuss compensation-related increases.
Looking at compensation-related items specifically, the budget includes a 3% salary increase for all staff. This is considered a mandatory item as it is included in the state budget. The budget proposal is based on an estimated 15% increase in healthcare cost and shared with employees on a 70-30 split, with the division covering 70% of the increased cost. Earlier this year, the division had a compensation study performed by Bolton, which I will share more specific information about on the next few slides. But included in the budget proposal is a total of $2.5 million to start implementing the recommendations from that study. Additionally, funds are included in the budget proposal to support the expanded summer school program that has been offered for several years, which has been supported by grant funding that is no longer available. There are funds to provide training pay to new WJCC teachers prior to the start of their contract, stipend requests, as well as contractual day changes for several positions. In total, compensation-related items amount to approximately $10.1 million. From the Bolton compensation study, this table shows a preliminary implementation cost summary for their recommended changes. These recommended changes to salaries would cost a total of $7.6 million. $1.7 million for the combining of our support and administrative scales into a general range scale, and $5.9 million for the teacher scale. These cost estimates do not include benefits and also assumes all recommendations are implemented in a single year. Once benefit costs are added in, the total is $9.6 million. This information from Bolton's compensation study shows our lack of competitiveness with our peers across our teacher scales. We range from 2.7% to 8.4% behind our peers. Likewise, related to our support staff, this table shows that approximately 64% of our support staff are paid below a competitive range as compared to the market and our peers.
We thought it was important to share with you some specific regional rankings as well. Working under the assumption that our regional competitors will also do a 3% increase, you can see where we are in the region related to a Bachelor of Arts Step 0 to Step 1 teacher. Looking at the next slide, again, utilizing the 3% increase at the state level, you'll see that we drop further behind in the regional rankings for a master's teacher on Step 0 to Step 1. We continue throughout the year to have vacancies. Our goal on the first day of school is to be 100% staffed. On the first day of school, we were about 99.2% staffed. The number of teachers that enter and leave the profession during the course of the school year has continued to grow. And right now, for this current school year, we have 8 teaching vacancies in the month of March. At the same time, as you look at the trend data, and that slide advances right there, we have a pretty significant turnover trend. So year over year, we are hiring more than 100 teachers, a high of 172 in fiscal year 24 to nearly 135 in fiscal year 25. The work of our Human Resources Department is never ending, and it is always, always recruiting season. Let me insert here a public service announcement that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we're having a staffing event at War Hill High School. Anybody that is watching or has friends who are interested in working for WJCC should come to War Hill tomorrow at 9 a.m. As we look at the Bolton study, it is important for us to also share with our funding partners our regional ranking with some of our staff members who are on the lowest end of our current support scale. And our scale starts at grade 5, and grade 5 includes custodians, cafeteria staff, and bus aides. Again, assuming the 3% increase across all of those divisions, you can see how we would compare. Grade 6 are teacher assistants. Again, we're providing this comparison for you with a 3% salary increase that is coming from the state budget. And then grade 7, this is a second level of our teacher assistants, and this is also where we begin our clerical level. You can see where we stack up with a 3% increase. Finally, we wanted to share information about bus drivers. You may be aware that the school board supported a mid-year $3 an hour increase for our bus drivers, which helps us be significantly more competitive across the region. But you can see we still lag behind a couple other divisions depending upon how they approach compensation going into the next fiscal year.
As we look to implement a year 1 plan from the Bolton study, the budget proposal includes $1.9 million to adjust the teacher scale where we are behind our competitors. We plan to target mid-career teachers to support their continued work within our organization. The average increase would be close to 5%, with some teachers receiving between an 8 and 9% increase. The new beginning bachelor's teacher salary would be $55,311 per the Bolton recommendation. Teachers at the top of the pay scale who might not ordinarily be in line for a 3% pay raise would also receive a top of the scale payment to ensure that they will also receive a 3% increase. We also plan to smooth out the transition between steps to ensure that we have at least a 0.5% between each step. Similarly, as we consider the unified scale, $600,000 is included in the budget proposal to address the areas where we are behind our competitors. We plan to focus on our lowest paid employees within grades 5 through 16, with over 100 employees being brought to a new minimum with an overall increase of more than 3%. All staff on this scale will receive a minimum 3% raise, and the new minimum pay would start at $15.50 per hour. As with teachers at the top of the scale, any employee at the top of the unified scale will also receive an additional payment to ensure that they will also receive a 3% increase. The superintendent's budget proposal is based on an estimated 15% increase to healthcare cost and shared on a 70-30 split with employees. The impact to our budget is an increase of $2.8 million. Currently, the division utilizes the local choice for our health care. This year, we did engage in a request for proposal process, which is currently being finalized. We do anticipate this cost to come down as we work through that process and finalize the information. On this chart, you can see the historical health insurance rate increases with the local choice over time from 2013 to present. Moving on to the next category of expenditure request, you will see here a compilation of the position requests included in the budget proposal, other than the mandatory ones for LEAP teachers and special education IEP-related positions. They are separated into school-based staffing requests, which are at the top in the darker green. These include positions like classroom teachers, gifted and talented resource teachers, a counselor, additional special education aides, and elementary teacher assistants for behavior support. The elementary security positions are currently grant funded. Next year will be our final year of eligibility for the grant, so the budget proposal includes moving these positions into the operating fund. We may know by final budget adoption in May if we will receive funding for these positions. However, this grant does have a matching requirement, so even if we receive the grant again for all 9 positions, a minimum of $250,000 will be required in the operating fund to support the match requirement. The next section represents positions that provide direct school support. These are positions that we recommend transitioning from grant funds into the operating fund next year, and include speech language pathologists, as well as the portion of the K-5 literacy coordinator that is grant funded. The last section represents central support positions in human resources, finance, and operations. In total, these position requests amount to approximately $3.1 million, and we will now share more specific details surrounding these positions. In order to maintain our adopted class size ratios at the elementary level as outlined here, we anticipate needing an additional 3 FTEs at a cost of $270,000. And in order to maintain our adopted class size ratios as outlined here for high school, 4 additional teachers will be needed next year at an estimated cost of $360,000. This will be reviewed once course requests are finalized. For the 25-26 school year, we will need to add 1 school counselor to maintain our current level of service. The addition of 1 school counselor will allow us to maintain the recommended ratio of 250 to 1 set by the American School Counseling Association. Additionally, this supports our ability to meet the Virginia State Code of providing 80% of counselor time in direct services to students.
In alignment with the division's strategic plan and the key priority, we are requesting 1 additional assistant principal for the Bright Beginnings pre-K program. The Bright Beginnings pre-K program has 1 principal and 1 assistant principal, supervising a staff of about 85 employees at 5 elementary schools, 32 classrooms of close to 400 students. Running parallel to the physical construction of a new school, or in this case, 2 new pre-K centers, the school division has historically hired a planning principal prior to the opening of a new school facility. Therefore, in a similar approach, we're requesting a second assistant principal allocation for the Bright Beginnings pre-K program for the start of the 25-26 school year. This second assistant principal would allow the current principal to have a more direct hand in the detailed planning needed to bring 5 sites of 85 employees together as one team supporting 500 students at the 2 new pre-K centers. Once the 2 new pre-K centers are open with staff and students in the 2 buildings, we feel it's imperative to have an assistant principal at each site daily, allowing the principal to move between the 2 sites, performing essential duties, and leading the entire program. Furthermore, our Bright Beginnings pre-K program serves our most at-risk students, with close to 60% of those students receiving special education services. And to put that into perspective, our 9 elementary schools have a range of 14 to about 21% of their total students receiving special education services. Again, in alignment with the division's strategic plan and the key priority, we're requesting 2 additional gifted and talent development teachers to work directly with students in grades kindergarten to 2nd at 2 of our elementary schools. Elevate to 28 emphasizes the importance of pursuing excellence, championing the success of every student, and increasing the identification of K-12 gifted students from underrepresented student groups by 5%. Furthermore, Goal 1 of the school division's local gifted plan supports the idea of elevating the thinking of all students to uncover student potential for rigorous coursework and programming, such as our gifted program. The elementary gifted program has 3 main core components: talent development push-in lessons for every K-2 classroom using Harvard's Project Zero thinking routines, followed by classroom visits into all K-2 classrooms to co-teach and monitor students' need for challenge, teacher collaboration through team and departmental planning, and providing differentiated instructional strategies and materials to challenge all students in the regular classroom. Over the last 3 years, we've implemented the pilot program at James River Elementary by providing 2 full-time gifted resource teachers at that school. 1 gifted teacher focuses solely on grades kindergarten through 2nd grade, while the other gifted resource teacher is working with the upper elementary grades. This year, we replicated the model at Norge Elementary School, and we want to continue growing the program by adding 2 additional gifted teachers at 2 more elementary schools. Currently, the remaining 7 elementary schools also receive talent development push-in for grades K through 2, but those schools share 2 traveling itinerant gifted teachers to serve them. This means the itinerant gifted teacher is only at the assigned school once a week. Thus, the program components must be spread out over the course of a month, meaning the students receive 1 gifted push-in lesson per month, compared to the 8 push-in lessons received at James River and Norge. And now I'll hand it off to Dr. Brown for further conversation.
As part of our commitment to the key priority in Elevate 28, we are requesting funding for 6 additional paraprofessional positions to support our self-contained classrooms that serve students with disabilities who require increased level of need and support. Currently, each self-contained classroom in WJCC has 1 assigned paraprofessional. While this support is invaluable, it's not always enough to meet the increasingly complex needs of our students. We are requesting 6 additional paraprofessional positions to enhance instruction, promote opportunities in their less restrictive environments, and ensure a safe and supportive learning. These positions would be assigned to elementary schools that currently do not have an additional paraprofessional support, ensuring comparable resources across each elementary campus. More support in these classrooms means more time focused on learning, better access to individualized instruction, and greater opportunities for collaboration with general education peers. Additionally, we are requesting support to strengthen behavioral needs across K-12. To begin this effort, we are prioritizing our youngest learners by requesting 9 teacher assistant positions. one for each elementary school in WJCC. These assistants would provide essential support for students, particularly in kindergarten and first grade, as they develop emotional regulation and self-management skills in the classroom throughout the instructional day. By providing this additional support, we can create more structured and responsive learning environments that meet the needs of our students. These positions would help ensure that students receive guidance and reinforcement throughout their school day, promoting positive engagement and a sense of security. This request for additional teacher assistance aligns with the work already being done by WJCC school staff, leadership, and student services. Over the summer, one of our key goals is to reduce, one of our key goals is to reduce reliance on exclusionary disciplinary practices such as out-of-school suspension. The departments of school leadership and student services met with each school over the summer to analyze discipline data from the previous year, set behavioral goals, and identify supports needed to achieve them. And that work doesn't stop there. Throughout the year, student services continues to meet with individual schools at the end of each quarter to review behavioral data, assess progress on their discipline goals, and determine next steps. These ongoing efforts are helping schools implement strategies that keep students engaged and supported. As we continue to review behavioral data and collaborate with schools, the need for additional support became even clearer. The trends highlighted on this slide reflect feedback gathered during our summer discipline review meetings, school-based discussions, and employee input sessions. At the elementary level, there is a growing need for targeted supports to help students develop emotional regulation and maintain stamina throughout the school day. In kindergarten and first grade, we're seeing a large portion of behavior referrals for students whose action requires support and intervention. These situations often require immediate staff intervention, and without a timely response, behaviors can escalate and sometimes lead to unsafe situations or even suspension. Administrators have emphasized that having a dedicated staff to implement behavioral plans, provide structured and timely reinforcement, and offer additional support across general education classrooms throughout the day would make a difference in managing classroom environments. Behavioral data reinforces this need, showing that kindergarten and first graders account for 45% of major referrals at the elementary level. While a referral does not always result in out-of-school suspension or even discipline, it highlights where additional staffing is needed to provide the timely interventions. Creating an elementary behavioral support position will help address student needs while minimizing instructional time lost to behavioral challenges. These positions, staffed with certified individuals skilled in nonviolent crisis intervention, will work closely with school leadership, school administration, and student services to deliver proactive, tailored interventions. As part of the school's behavioral goals, these positions will be essential in supporting and guiding interventions for students receiving ongoing support. At the secondary level, we're proposing to sustain 4 positions in our operating budget to support the new RESET program that will be housed within the Restorative Center. The RESET program is designed for students who have demonstrated behavioral concerns at the secondary level and are being considered for short-term suspension. Instead of serving their suspension at home, these students, when deemed appropriate and safe, would have the opportunity to receive full-day in-person instruction at the Restorative Center. During their time in the RESET program, students will remain engaged in their academic work while also receiving targeted support and behavior based on their specific needs and disciplinary history. Additionally, students will develop a plan of support for their transition back to their zone school. This approach not only reduces our reliance on exclusionary practices, it also provides an increased level of supports for both the students and the schools they return to, helping foster a more positive and constructive learning environment. Students who are suspended often face repeated suspensions, experience social isolation, and develop feelings of distrust. These disruptions can result in lower achievement on standardized tests due to missed instructional time. While we recognize that out-of-school suspension is necessary in some situations, it's equally important that students are given the chance to reflect on their actions, repair relationships, and receive academic support during their time away from school. By providing this support before they return to their school, we can ensure a smoother transition back into the classroom. The positions that I've shared with you support our goal to provide the support and resources to meet the diverse needs of our students, particularly those who face behavioral challenges or request additional assistance in their learning environments. By adding targeted staff positions such as paraprofessionals and teacher assistants and expanding programs like the RESET, we aim to create more supportive learning environments where students can thrive. These initiatives not only help reduce exclusionary practices, but also ensure that every student receives the academic and behavioral support they need to succeed, both inside and outside of the classroom.
We know that there are a number of FTEs that we are requesting in this budget and felt like it was important for the funding partners as well as our board to have an understanding of where those allocations may be utilized based on current student projections and enrollment ideas. On this slide, we've broken down for you the new positions in the operating budget and where they would be allocated based on our current student enrollment pieces. I do want to add the caveat that student course requests, enrollments, withdrawals change over the course of the next several months. And while there may be a 1.0 listed for a school right now, that may not be the case in August and September as we reopen school. This is for illustrative purposes. The blue information that is surrounding some of the numbers suggests that those positions already have people in them. So for instance, we already have a security officer at each of our 9 elementary schools. We are utilizing a state grant. We'll be moving into the last year of that state grant, and hence we're recommending that we pull that into the operating budget. Here's a similar slide that breaks down the allocation requests at the middle school and high school level as well. There are several positions that are included in the operating budget that we consider to be essential as well. They are essential based on our ability in the central support realm to provide timely support to our staff and students. We are requesting 2 additional positions in finance and an additional position in human resources. Let me share with you some of the data within finance. The scenario that the transactional data, that additionally the payroll transaction data is up 80%, and that is directly related to the amount of staffing that occurs during the course of the year. Staffing at one point, back when I was a building principal or even before when I was a teacher, generally staffing happened January through June or July, and you had a group that you knew was in place August through the year. That's not the case anymore, and that's having an impact on human resources. It's also having an impact on finance and payroll. On the HR side, again, it's a 24/7 scenario where we're trying to bring staff into the organization, teachers, support, etc. This particular slide provides data around our ratio of staff within human resources benchmarked against other human resource departments regionally. And finally, one of the things that I've heard on a recurring basis as I've talked with folks are some level of frustration with the timely ability for our operations and maintenance team to address open work orders and ensure temperature within buildings and spills within buildings and ceiling tiles within buildings get maintained on a frequent basis. We are understaffed in operations, and we are bringing forward 2 FTEs for what we're considering maintenance assistant positions. These positions are not full-time supervisors or necessarily leadership positions, but we're utilizing these as grow your own, where we could develop capacity amongst our operations team by bringing people on board and training them into a more substantive role within the organization.
The last category of expenditure increases are those that do not fall into the previously shared categories. These include funding to support AP exam fees for all students who enroll in AP courses, funds to support the supply increases in the operations department, funding for benefit administration services, and funding for cognitive coaching and professional development. These items amount to $558,000. The key priority prioritizes many aspects of academic growth for students. One area of focus is advanced coursework. Therefore, it is essential we return to embedding the cost of AP exams for all students within the operating budget. Several factors supporting this decision are that this supports student engagement in advanced coursework and eliminates any barriers connected to accessing and paying for AP exams. Participating in AP exams has the potential to support students and families, as students may have the opportunity to earn college credit based on student scores on AP exams. And finally, participation in credit-bearing college coursework has a direct impact on school accreditation within the 3E framework, which focuses on enrollment, employment, and enlistment. Specifically, schools earn points for student enrollment in AP courses and participation in advanced placement exams. Included in the budget proposal is a reduction of 5 FTEs and attrition savings, which totals $720,000.
I previewed at the beginning of the presentation that there were a number of items that were initially considered but then not included. I wanted to mention specifically some of the FTEs that are not included in our operating budget. It includes middle school assistant principals, it includes elementary school counselors, a custodial supervisor, elementary instructional coaches, and math intervention support teachers at the high school level. On the stipend front, we did not bring forward increases to stipends for national certifications for speech language pathologists or counselors or school psychologists. We did not bring forward an increase to stipend for advanced degrees or doctorate degrees, or the full request for intensive services for instructional assistants. There were some contractual changes that were requested that we were not able to bring forward as well, and this includes adding additional days to the work calendar for reading and math specialists at the elementary and middle school level, as well as adding a middle school lead counselor. So in the final analysis, we want to provide you with what we think the request will be. The additional funds needed potentially are starting at 13.9, as we referenced at the beginning of the presentation. Pending favorable approval of the Senate and House of Delegates budget that is awaiting the governor's sign-off, that number could drop to 11.9. And as Ms. Ewing mentioned, as we go through the healthcare process and solidify our plan for healthcare in the coming year, we believe that number of 11.9 will continue to go down as well. That will come into sharper focus next week, and then by the 25th of March when the board approves the budget. That concludes the formal presentation. We appreciate your forbearance as we shared all of that information, but we think it's important for the bodies to have a firm understanding of what the needs are and what we consider to be continued investment in our education system. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Mrs. Hunley, did you want to say something first?
Yeah, just real quick. Another layer to the LEAP teachers. I know when we hire Spanish, French, German, Latin, and sign language teachers, they're fluent in both languages, but the LEAP teachers are not fluent in the 40 languages that are coming to them along with, you know, the other languages. So I didn't want anyone to assume all the LEAP teachers have a dual degree in other languages.
All right, any questions from our funding partners? Mr. Hippel?
Okay, a couple questions. On the AP exams, 340,000. I saw on the earlier slide that we're not doing that now. So we're kind of losing state funding, it seems to be, by not doing that. Could we get more state funding if they finish those exams and that's recorded? And what would be on that 340,000, what would be our return on value? And you don't have to answer it now, maybe something you'll have to research.
Right.
But it sounded like in the beginning of it that we're losing certain credits that we could get back if we did these exams. And so I'm wondering if we're spending 340,000 on them, you know, what would be our return that maybe we can get from the state?
Yes, sir. So to clarify, with the new accreditation model, there are points available for students who points towards the accreditation matrix that Mr. Walker took us through. If you sit for and take an advanced placement exam, no matter what you score, you receive 0.5 points. So part of our rationale in looking at the new accreditation framework is to help ensure every one of our students who's enrolled in an AP class subsequently takes the exam. So there's not a financial thing that we're leaving on the table or getting back, but it does accentuate our accreditation work around ensuring that our schools are on track or distinguished.
Currently, students and families pay for the exams.
Okay.
That's right.
It's not state funded.
It's not state funded.
So in order, if we're trying to encourage or say everyone has to sit for the exam, that was the rationale behind saying, we're not gonna force someone to pay when it's us saying you have to take it. At the same time, there are waivers for now in place for families. and
There are
kids that-
students who qualify for a reduced fee on their exam.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's where the money's coming from now.
All right, I've got a couple if I may. We were talking about maintenance and all that up at Norge when we have the voting up there. Appreciate y'all allowing us to use that as a voting center. But the daylight savings, the lights don't click on. So we had a lot of old people last year coming through there, and you couldn't see anything. And they're stumbling and all that. And
On
it's
election day?
older, yeah, it's an older community, and daylight savings, and I asked staff, and of course, that was already preset, so
Sure.
it wasn't anything. So it might be something that we
We'll
could
try to
look
get
at
that addressed.
before the next time.
We've got until November. When do we
Yeah.
fall back? We just
That's
leave
right.
it?
Yeah, we'll just wait till November, give you a little heads up.
Thank you.
Snow days. And I know this time we couldn't do it because we had the computer problem, and that's why. Is there a way we can do like we did in COVID and utilize that snow day, even though, we can't come to the actual school itself, but we can do it online and have the students keep up with their course, even though they have the day off or 2 days off for snow, and in that way, it'll keep in line that, hey, we may not need snow days. We may be able to do away with snow days and let the teachers and kids get out a little earlier than they normally would.
We developed during the course of the month of January into early February a plan for what the state calls unscheduled remote learning. We had a plan in place and we're ready to activate that plan, and the cybersecurity event challenged our ability to activate that plan.
Yep.
I think in the fall of the school year, when we might have hurricane challenges, or as we get into the winter and have snow challenges, as an organization we'll be better positioned to take advantage of that time.
Great, thank you. Let's see, it said, one of the others was mandatory increases of $3,778,500. Does the state, when of course they give us mandatory things and they say there's no money connected, is it the same with y'all when they say you will have, you have to do this increase and it's gonna cost us over $3.2 million. Is that something that, since the state told you you're gonna do it, is that something they're paying for, or is that something the localities will pay for, or is there a percentage?
It's generally a percentage. So if we look at the 3% salary increase for staff, I think we're tabulating that at about 3.9 million. About 1.3 is covered by the locality.
Okay. And that might be something as we go up to Richmond and still need to push. Answered that one. Let's see. It was talked about the teachers' pay compared to other localities. And I saw on most of the slides it said benefits included. I didn't see if it was on there. I missed that. Is that included, the salaries included the benefits from those localities, like York County's paying $15.50 and the benefits are?
No, sir. The data that we were showing you for the classified staff or support staff was the hourly rate. It was not benefits inclusive. The information we shared for the teacher salary was salary and did not include benefits.
Because I know if we have a good benefit package, that's going to enhance people as well, because they're going to be like, I can make 50 cents more, but I drive 20 more minutes, but I've got better benefits over here, and kind of so, when I look at that, I like to look at benefits as well, because that puts me in a comparison of, okay, where we actually are, because benefits are becoming more and more
Yes, sir.
an important item for people.
As we looked at through the healthcare RFP and have tried to benchmark ourselves as an organization versus other entities with respect to benefits, it becomes a little challenging to compare apples to apples. For example, health plan in our locality may look different in terms of a health plan in York County based on deductibles, based on what the division or locality puts towards that, and then which plan you choose within the healthcare scenario. So we try as hard as we can to provide an apples to apples comparison, but what we find is when we're looking specifically at the benefits front, it doesn't always equate, and it leads to more questions, frankly, than just simply sharing salary pieces and indicating we continue to want healthcare costs for employees to stay as low as possible and then be as fiscally prudent as we can at the division level.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, and staff did a wonderful job. And
Thank you, Mr. Hippel.
also let the teachers know their grades for them.
What else, Ms. Larson?
So, couple questions. The kindergarten, first grade discipline issue, staggering, and wondering if you were looking at any type of parent programming or how, you don't need to tell me here, I'm just wondering if there's an education component of that you're bringing parents into to try to, because that's an enormous amount of class time that's being eaten up with that type of percentage for discipline. Let me preface this by saying that I always believe efficiencies can be found most places. However, to do efficiencies without a plan, which is what I believe is happening at the federal government, I think is most scary. And when I look at what happened at the Department of Ed this week, with I believe a 50% reduction, and the thought going that it's going to go to the state, and so with your numbers that you've shown about special ed, wondering, one, have you heard about how the state is preparing? What have they given to you all to deal with the 50% reduction in workforce? And third question would be your number of students this year was, I believe last year was 57, and then this year was 6, which that's quite a difference. So wondering if there was, is there a different matrix or different things that you're looking at that, or how you, what do you think caused that type of drop? And I have other questions, but I can ask them via email. if
Let
needs
me be sure. Your last question: number of students.
So you showed the number of special ed identified students
special
that you
education,
had,
right?
and then this year it was 6. That's quite a difference.
Growth.
Oh, was it growth?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay. Okay, I was looking at, I thought you were going the other way. Okay, thank you, John. Obviously, I need another Coke Zero. And so then, I guess the question would be about the discipline piece, about the parent programming. And then I am wondering if you are getting any guidance from BDOE about the federal possibility of federal cuts. Especially concerning for me is when you have a locality that is already picking up $18 million. When IDEA was introduced, it was supposed to be met at 100% by the federal government during the Johnson administration. That has never, ever been the case. It's been always at the 40% mark. And so obviously that's going down even further. So that is of concern of us. This budget ask is big. I understand it. But of course, we're concerned about, in the middle of the year, are you going to come to us and say, we've taken a huge hit, again, in special ed, and instead of 18 million, we're gonna need 10 million more. So that's the reason for the question.
Sure. The discipline piece at the K-1 discipline scenarios and the need to continue to engage families and provide supports, I think at each of our buildings, that's occurring with school administrators having conversations. I also believe that we continue to enhance our Family Academy programming. We've even moved to a Lunch and Learn Family Academy session online I think we had some of our most robust attendance for a 12 to 12:30 session online. Relative to the federal funding scenario, at this juncture, Virginia Department of Ed has not said be concerned about X or don't be concerned about Y. I think that as states begin to better understand the scenario from Washington and what might be the impacts, that we'll certainly communicate that to the localities. As we look at our federal funded positions, we have nearly 41 FTEs that are directly related to federal funding, which, let me get my glasses back on.
Mm-hmm.
Right, 40.96 or 41 FTEs. So if there were to be zero federal funding, we would need to find a way to accommodate that or decide that we're not able to support said positions.
Thank you.
Mr. Dr. Keever, could I mention something? The state is having two emergency committees, this House and the Senate, are like looking at this exact question. I think it's important that localities take the time to watch those presentations. The last one was about 2 hours long, but the latter part was important because it tells you what the General Assembly can actually do in those actions. There's a couple things that our laws protect us in some ways to help our localities in certain ways. I'm sure VACA will give an analysis at some point too. But I think it's important. Those meetings will be ongoing until July 1st of this year. There'll be 4 meetings. There'll be one on Hampton Roads, I'm pretty sure, and they're looking for a location at this point. But I think the next place is going to be in Arlington, and then they'll be in Hampton Roads, Richmond, and then Southwest. So those will be rolling out throughout the rest of the year to kind of dive into this questions and things that are coming from the. So if the VODOE can't do it, I'm sure the state will to an extent. So if they can. So.
What else, Mr. Eisenhower?
Yeah, I wanted to expand a little bit on what Ms. Larson was saying. It's important because the question I had from the very beginning was looking at the impact on the school district if federal funds completely went away. Recognizing that, of course, the state may or may not pick up some of that, but I think there's a risk of that occurring to some degree or another. The only figure I saw in there was you had $2.4 million for special ed that is funded by the federal government. The 41 FTEs probably include all of the other things that I'm trying to get a feel for what the total dollar impact of the federal government is on our school budget, and how big that impact would be if it all went away. Have you looked at that yet? Is that a question that I know it's sort of a wild guess, I guess.
Well, I think we have a grants fund budget summary for the 2026 budget that suggests $5.125 million are federally allocated funds through grants.
Okay. Does that include that $2.4 million for special ed?
Yes, it does.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So you're looking potentially at about a $5 million hit.
I think that's accurate. I think that we would, as we understand it as I understand it, we're also a year out on the federal funding allocations.
Okay.
So just for clarity, Ms. Ewing, we're plus a year. Explain that for me. I know I'm putting you on the spot. So there is money that has already been allocated.
Correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the potentiality that we need to look at something very specific with regard to federal funding would likely be FY 27.
27.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to say, is that we feel pretty comfortable right here and now for 26, but it's 27 that would become an issue.
Okay.
That's
helpful.
I'm sorry, Jim, just a quick clarification on that. Money that's been allocated, is that the same thing as money that's been handed
to you,
over,
yeah.
received?
The federal grants are a reimbursement basis, so we
So
don't.
it's not money that we have in our hands?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that allocation and actual receiving it are not the same thing. Okay,
A couple of other real quick questions, and this one has always been sort of a mystery to me, about the pay scale. You're saying that you're now, the entry level is not 55,000 for teachers, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then there are steps that you have, and it looks like there are step 0 to step 25. And my mindset goes back to my military because, you know, you either had pay grade across the top and then you had years of service so that you could, you know, there was a matrix. You knew that if you were going to be at a certain rank by promotion and a certain number of years of service, what your pay would be. What is the, how do you define those 25 steps? If I were a new teacher coming in, how would I have any idea of knowing where I might be in so many years? Is any of it performance related? Is any of it time related? I'm trying to understand what criteria you use to advance from step to step.
Years of service.
Years of service?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I believe it's more than 25. I believe we actually
Okay.
go up to 40.
Okay.
Which, from the compensation philosophy, is a never-ending. Most suggestions in terms of compensation is that you max out at about 30, maybe 35, but we've
Okay.
continued to extend to 40.
Okay, yeah. I know, I think the military pay is capped out at 30, so, anyway. That helps.
So
that was
if you are a new teacher coming to us, but you have 5 years of experience, you don't come in at step 0.
Okay, that was one of my other questions, because someone who transfers in, say, has 10 or 15 years teaching experience in Virginia, they would come in at the appropriate step.
That's right.
Okay, that helps me understand. The other question I'm sort of interested in is about, because obviously your compensation study is going to be really important and you know, implemented over a several year period. What is the, if you will, the top end of the range? In other words, you know, if I'm looking at 55 as a starting salary, what's the top end of the range normally make? And I know it's not a linear type of thing. Depends on how many people are in each different step or whatever as you go through. So but I'm just trying to figure out if you're trying to attract new teachers, what expectations would they have of how far they would get in a career?
I don't have the full pay scale in front of me.
Okay.
And we can get you some of that information. The compensation book that we publish on an annual basis and it's approved by the school board lays out from 0 to 40 what the steps are, and you can see max earning potential in that book that's published on an annual basis.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. That's what I was looking for.
Yes, sir. I think it's
Okay.
called our salary pay book, and
Yeah.
it's on our website under careers.
Okay, very good. And then the last thing, I was sort of curious about the medical. I know that's always been an issue, and you guys are working hard to keep it so it doesn't eat up all the pay raise for the teachers. Is this right now currently? What percentage of the medical expenses does the school cover versus the teachers? And then, I mean, is it 80-20, and then now the increase is being shared at 70-30, or is it?
We're at 70-30.
70-30 across the board.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's kept fairly consistent then.
For the last several years, that's the
Okay.
case.
All right.
And I will say that as we've gone through the RFP process, and I want to be really careful because we have not quite finalized, so I don't want to betray the process, but we have seen renewal increases substantially higher than what we thought we would see, which is why it's important for us as we try to safeguard our employees by providing excellent health care at a reasonable price, but also be fiscally responsible as an organization.
Okay. Well, and the last thing I want to say is, I got a whole page full of notes here, but it's really very informative, very, very helpful. I think that the key is 87% of your budget is on people.
Yes, sir.
You know, same thing with the county and the city. The bulk of our budget is dedicated to people. They're the ones that make the organization work. So I applaud you for taking the approach with the compensation and doing it over several years. But you know, I think that's going to be key. And I hope you have your priorities that you know when if we get to the point where we're constrained, I think the important part there is for you to have your priorities of what you need to be doing first. And I think it looks to me like you're focusing on your people.
I think that's absolutely the case.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And I would just follow up on that as I reflect on the proposed budget that you're presenting. You know, I think you did well to identify the changes in the student population and the demands that they require and the extra effort. And that's not unlike demands we have in the city with our residents and expectations of our residents. And so understanding that investing in human capital is essential to support the human capital that we're here to educate. It's not unfounded from my perspective that these requests for additional people and pay and extra dollars to the budget has been presented. So hopefully we'll be able to meet that expectation.
Thank you,
I think you've demonstrated some significant improvements over this past year in terms of some of the numbers that we saw earlier. And I would hope that if this budget is supported, we'll see those numbers improving even more greatly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just ask one one question? Again, excuse me. Getting back to the point that Ms. Larson raised about the issues at kindergarten and through second grade behavioral problems. Is that something that's being addressed in the pre-K program at this point? Not necessarily, at least identification and providing strategies and so forth?
Yes, sir, it is. Not all of our students go through
Sure.
the Bright Beginnings pre-K program.
Mm-hmm.
We have a fair number, 395-ish. We're hoping to get to 500 here shortly. I think it is incumbent upon all of us at the elementary level and then community-wide to have conversations around how do we help students be prepared for that enrollment in kindergarten and first grade. It's going to require all of us working on it together.
Mm-hmm. And not really related to the excellent presentation on budget and the earlier presentation, but is there any, do you have any feedback at this point on the issue of cell phones among students and what impact that may be having?
I think that it has been generally positive. Change is not easy. Our students, I think, have responded fairly well to the change. Our staff has responded fairly well to the change. There are some students who have fully lost the privilege to bring their cell phone to school because they accumulated 4, 5, 6, 7-ish violations in the course of the first semester. But I feel like our staff, initially when we made the move, I think some of us were concerned that staff would be spending an inordinate amount of time policing cell phones. And I don't believe that has been the case. And there has been far less use and abuse.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I've heard from students that they don't mind it, and then I've also heard anecdotally from teachers and other people in schools that cafeterias are actually buzzing because children are speaking to each other face to face instead of being on their phones, and so there's a social element that I think is positive as well. And I don't think we've gotten a single complaint from a parent. That was also a concern, that parents would feel the need to be reaching their child or be concerned for their safety if there was an incident in a school, and that they would be very upset. And we haven't gotten a single complaint. So.
Great.
Any other questions at this point?
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
Could we give a quick what's going on with the pre-K facilities? I know is that something we can talk about? Like
That's
where we
not
are in
on
the
our
process?
agenda.
I know, but we did mention it on our slides, so.
Yes, ma'am. What would you like me to do?
Is that something that the funding partners are requesting?
I'd love to know what the status is of the pre-K
Just give it
bidding process. and-
Sure. Site plan submission number 3 for Claire Bird Baker has been in for about a week, maybe 2 weeks. Site plan submission 3 for Norge, I believe, was filed on Monday. Based on code, we should, I think there are 35, 40 days to review said site plans, and if approved, we are in position to go out for bid on the projects.
And so that would mean that the bid process would take,
Bids need to be open for 30 days.
and so potentially awarding would be sometime this spring.
We maintain a flicker of hope for a groundbreaking this spring into early summer.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there are no other questions, I'll just conclude with one final comment related to something that Mayor Pond said, and that is, yes, 87% of our budget is people, and we care greatly about taking care of our staff and our teachers and making sure that it's the best working environment possible and that they are adequately compensated, especially in relation to their peers around in the region. But ultimately, even that, even taking care of our staff and making sure they're adequately compensated is still a supporting priority to our key priority, which is academic achievement and college and career readiness, because ultimately that is what we are tasked to produce. And that's, so all of our requests are tied to anticipated academic enhancement and achievement. So from a board perspective, that is what we care about. So if there are no other comments, do we need to do anything else? Let's see. Nope. All right. The school board is adjourned.
Mr. Stevens, take a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Ms. Knoll? Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye. We adjourn.
City Council may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye. We're adjourned.
Michael, you didn't get in front of it this time. You were behaving.